Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Obrigada, bom dia!
Good morning.
Bom dia! Gente, hoje a gente tem uma manhã
Good
que vai passar
morning. We're
rápido.
going to have this morning that is gonna fly
Todo
by
mundo já
us.
bateu uma palma.
Was
Quem tá
listening
me
to
ouvindo, bate
me
duas palmas.
clap once,
Olá,
clap
bom
twice.
dia.
Hello,
Hoje uma
good
hora a gente
morning.
consegue. Gente, eu sou a Maria. Tem alguém
My
aqui que
name
não
is
tava ontem?
Maria. Is there someone here who wasn't here
Sejam
yesterday?
muito bem-vindos hoje.
Welcome. For
Eu
those
já
who
vou
weren't
contar
here
para vocês um pouquinho
yesterday,
do que
I'm
nós
going to tell
passamos
you a
ontem.
little bit about what we
Hoje a gente
had
vai numa tacada
yesterday.
só até uma da
Today,
tarde.
we're
Talvez a gente se
going
estenda um pouquinho. Estamos
until 1
tentando não,
p.m.
mas já
We
são
may
muitos
have a few
instantes.
delays.
Então já aviso
We're
que talvez a
trying not
gente
to have
chegue quase
delays,
uma e
but it's
meia.
already
Pedimos
9:24,
desculpa
so
desde já.
I
Mas é que tem
let
muita
you
coisa
know already
maravilhosa
that
que a
we're
gente vai fazer
going
hoje
to
aqui de manhã.
finish at about 1:30, but we're gonna have wonderful things this
Para a
morning.
gente começar, eu sempre acho importante a gente ter um minutinho de chegada, né? Antes
So to
disso ainda, eu pedi para
start,
vocês, a gente vai
I
ter 4 horas
think
de
it is
manhã.
nice
Quem
to have
puder,
a
não
moment
ficar
of
no
arrival.
celular,
We're gonna
não
have
ficar no
four
computador,
hours of
sabe? Que
activities
tá
this
acontecendo
morning.
um
If
milhão
you
de
can,
coisas, você tem que mandar uma
keep
apresentação.
off your phone
Se
or
possível,
your
não é um
laptop. If
convite
I
aqui,
know
não é
that there's a
deixar
lot
o
of things
computador e o
happening, but
celular
this
de
is an
lado,
invitation to
para a gente poder
you.
estar
If you can
juntos,
leave
fisicamente,
your phone and your
energeticamente,
laptop
nessa manhã,
aside,
que é o
you
último
we can be
momento
together
da
in
sociedade
energy
civil
this morning
reunida, menos de um
because
minuto da
this is the
COP. É muito
last
raro a gente
moment
estar
of the
presencialmente hoje.
civil
Então
society
a gente poder
gathered
estar
less
aqui
than 1 month
inteiro.
before the
Acho que
COP.
esse é
It
meu
is very
convite, meu
rare
pedido
nowadays. So I
para
would
todo
like you
mundo
to
aqui
be
hoje.
here
E daí, um
fully,
momentinho
completely.
de
This is
quem
my
se sentir à
request for
vontade, a
today.
gente fechar um
If
pouquinho
you
o olho. Quem
feel
não se sentir à vontade, só
comfortable, close your
vai ficando mais
eyes. If you're
quietinho.
not comfortable with closing your eyes, just
E
look
uma
down
respiração
and let's
funda.
take a deep
Sente o
breath.
peso
Let's feel the
das suas
weight
coxas na cadeira, no
of your
sofá, na
thighs
poltrona.
on the chair, on
Sente os
the
pés no chão.
couch,
Aumenta o seu
wherever
peso,
you
assim, como se
are.
você pudesse
Feel your feet on the
ocupar
ground.
mais
Just let your
essa
weight
parte, ficar
down
apoiada
so you
no
can
chão, no encosto,
occupy
no
the
assento.
ground beneath you and the chair that you're sitting on.
E daí, lembrando de ontem,
And
eu quero que
remembering
você
yesterday, I
venha
would
e
like
traga
you
essa
to
memória
bring
de
back
algum
the
momento que
memory
você
of
sentiu
a moment
esperança,
where when you felt hope
que você acreditou. A
yesterday.
gente está no momento que é
And
muito
a
fácil
moment
de
that you
perder
believed.
esperança.
We're in the
Muitas
moment
vezes
where
a
it's
gente acha que
very
não vai
easy
dar
to lose
jeito.
hope sometimes where we
E
feel
esse
like it's
esperançar,
not going to work and this
comprovadamente pela
feeling
ciência,
hope
é muito
proved by
importante. Teve
science
algum
is
momento
very
ontem que deu
important.
aquele
So is there
calorzinho
any
que você falou,
moment, were there a moment
meu
yesterday
Deus,
that
a
you
gente é muito
felt
forte.
warm and you felt we are very strong as a
Traz
civil society?
essa
Bring
sensação
back that
presente no
memory
corpo.
to your body.
E agora algum momento de afeto? Teve alguma conexão, algum encontro,
Now, think of a
alguma
moment of
fala que
affection. Is
ressoou
there any
quase num lugar
connections? Is
fraterno,
there any
assim, de
moments
se
that
sentir junto com as
felt
pessoas, esse
almost
lugar de relacionar?
fraternal, where you felt
Se tem,
related
traz
to
essa
someone?
lembrança como se ela pudesse ocupar seu corpo aqui hoje.
Bring this memory as if it could um,
E daí,
occupy
devagarzinho, quem fechou os olhos pode abrir.
this place here.
A
And if you
esperança e o
close your
afeto
eyes,
são
open your
propostas
eyes,
muito poderosas
hope and
nessa
affection are
luta que a gente está.
very
Mas não
powerful
são
weapons
coisas
in this
bobas.
struggle that we are now. They are not
O
something
esperançar, a teoria tem
lightly
artigos e
to
artigos
take
falando da
lightly.
importância da gente não
We
perder a
have
esperança.
many papers
E a gente
talking
está
about
aqui,
the
muitos de nós
importance
há
of
30
not
anos,
losing
20
hope,
anos,
and we
15 anos,
have been
10
here,
anos,
many of us,
tomando na
30 for
cabeça.
30 years,
Então a
20
gente
years,
pegar esse
10 years,
momento para,
uh,
cara,
being kicked
estamos
around. So
aqui,
let's take
né?
this
Não
moment
passarão.
to understand
E o
that we are
afeto,
going to remain
e não
here.
sei vocês,
And
mas ontem foi um
it's
encontro
important
de
to feel
gente que estava
affection too. I don't know
nesse
about you,
movimento
but
há anos,
yesterday
essa coisa
we
de você
had
tá
a
aqui
meeting of
ainda,
people who have
você
been
não
here for
desistiu.
years, and people were
Então,
asking,
manter
are you
esse
still
afeto, porque
here?
é
You haven't
entre
given up.
nós que a gente vai
So
conseguir se
let's
manter forte, porque a gente vai
keep
tomar
these
pancada.
affections because
A
we are
gente vai
going
seguir
to be
tomando
kicked
pancada.
around. We're
Eu só
going to
queria trazer um
continue
pouco mais dessa
um,
qualidade da nossa presença
having
antes da gente mergulhar
these
nesse copo de
adversities. So I
conhecimento,
would like to
informação, só para a
ask
gente
you
cultivar um
to
pouco esse
remain
outro
here
lado.
and to keep
E
your
para
hopes
quem
up.
não estava aqui
If you
ontem,
weren't here
a
yesterday,
gente vai ter um momento hoje no final da
we're
manhã,
going to have a
onde a gente
moment
vai
at the end of this
repassar
morning
pelos
when we're
4
going
aquários
to
de ontem, que
recap
foram os diálogos
the four
simultâneos que a gente
fishbowl
fez com os
dynamics
temas
of
de
yesterday, the
energia,
simultaneous dialogues that we did with the
financiamento,
topics of energy,
NDCs,
funding, and finance,
nossa natureza, diversidade, o
NDCs,
lugar dos povos. Então, a gente vai ter um
biodiversity,
momento
and
hoje para
the place of
recapitular
the
todas
peoples.
essas informações, os principais pontos que vieram, tá? Se vocês
So we're
tiverem
going to
qualquer
have a
dúvida, quem
moment
chegou pode falar aqui com a
to
equipe, uma
recap
equipe
these
maravilhosa
points.
aqui à disposição de vocês.
We have a wonderful team who can help
A
you. So
gente
if you
passou a
arrived
apresentação de
today,
ontem dos Silatimos para hoje.
we,
Como eu falei,
if you
essa
have
foi uma
any help, you
apresentação em
talk to them.
espanhol.
As I
Quero
told you,
saber
we
se as meninas
have
estão
today
tranquilas
to
de fazer
start
agora.
a campaign, a presentation of the
Então, a gente
campaign
vai
Si
conhecer essa
Latimos.
campanha
It is going to be
maravilhosa
in
da Cruz
Spanish. We're
Latina, que
going
a
to
gente vai
get to
passar
know
aqui.
this wonderful campaign of Si Latimos.
Não passei aqui a agenda. Tudo bem. Quem quiser, gente, aqui pode pedir aqui para a equipe. A gente está com transmissão online. Também quem quiser divulgar, a
We
gente está
also
com canal em
have
português, em
online
inglês, em espanhol.
streaming. So
Se você quiser
if you want
divulgar
to
para outras
disclose
pessoas que não
any
estão aqui, se você não
campaigns
der tempo de
that are
pegar,
for
pode
people
pedir
that are
aqui
not
na
here,
equipe
we
também,
have
tá? Porque aqui ficou pequenininho.
the chance
Vou esperar vocês
to
pegarem.
broadcast it to YouTube. We also have the QR codes for the YouTube transmission on in English and Spanish and in Portuguese.
Oi? Isso depois a gente vai passar só para vocês verem por cima, tá, gente? Esses são os painéis de
Just for you to
facilitação
see
gráfica
the
do exercício
drawings,
de
these
ontem.
are the what we call the
Depois a gente vai
graphic
passar
facilitation
esses
panels from the panels of
mais detalhes
yesterday.
para
We're
vocês, mas
going
só para vocês
to
saberem que tudo que foi trazido
give
foi
you more
registrado
details
e
on it,
também
but
no
just for you to know
documento.
that everything that was discussed was
Gente, cadê
recorded
os
here in these
próximos? Deixa eu
drawings.
puxar pra cá. Só um minutinho, acho que tem que sair e voltar da apresentação. Não, pode. Era para atualizar essa, mas está tudo bem. Entonces llamamos las chicas de
So we're
Silatimos para
going
hacer la
to call
presentación.
the girls from Si Latimos, from the campaign Si Latimos, for their presentation.
Muy bien. Vamos a empezar con unas preguntas.
Very good. Let's start with a few questions.
La crisis climática es
The
un
climate
invento de los
crisis
socialistas.
is
¿Qué
an
presidente
invention
dijo
of
esto?
socialists. What president said that?
Punto por allá, Enrique, en
A point to
Argentina.
Enrique in
Javier Milei.
Argentina, Javier Milei.
En algunas zonas de Chiapas, México, es
In
más
a
fácil
few
conseguir Coca-Cola
zones
que
of
agua.
Chiapas, Mexico, it's
¿Es
easier
esto
to get
verdad,
Coca-Cola
falso?
than water. Is it true or false? True.
Otra contundente.
Another
preservar el medio
controversial
ambiente,
one.
basta
To
con ir al
preserve
baño
the
cada 2
environment, it's enough to take a
Milei,
shower every
Trump
2
o
days.
Bolsonaro.
Milei, Trump, or Bolsonaro? Bolsonaro.
Bolsonaro.
Jair
En
Bolsonaro.
5 años,
In
una
5
taza de
years,
café costará lo
a
mismo
cup of
que cuesta
coffee will
hoy.
cost the same that it costs today. Is it true or false?
Exactamente, de hecho costará
It's
3 veces
false.
más.
It will cost 3 times more.
La Amazonía emite
The
actualmente
Amazon
más
emits
dióxido de carbono
currently
del que
more
absorbe.
CO2
¿Es
than
esto
it
cierto o es
absorbs. Is it
falso?
true or false?
Desafortunadamente es
Unfortunately,
verdad y lo ha
it is
confirmado el
true,
Instituto de Investigaciones
and it's
Espaciales de
confirmed
Brasil,
by the
entre otros, desde el
Institute of
año
Spatial
2020.
Investigations of Brazil since the year
Si las respuestas a estas
2020.
preguntas les
If the answers to these questions disturb you, it disturbs us too. That's why we're here. My name is Juliana Cinegas.
Nosotras representamos al
We represent the
Sí
um,
Latimos del que queremos contarles hoy.
the campaign Sí Latimos, and it's a part of this movement today. We're going to talk about the movement that we are a part of. First, we would like to show you a video.
Hay un impulso que compartimos todas y todos los
There
latinoamericanos.
is a pulse that everybody shares as Latin Americans, a rhythm that is born in our landmarks, and ancestral knowledge. The pulse of our hearts transcends borders. We are a creativity that transforms, resilience that inspires, biodiversity that enriches. We are the region where the impossible flourishes in each challenge and it transforms into possibilities. We're power for energy, just energy transition. We're the house of 40% of the world's biodiversity.
Guardianes de un tercio del agua dulce y
We're
conocimiento
guardians
que el planeta necesita
of
ahora.
1/3 of nature and ancestral knowledge. Here, investment changes lives. With rhythm, passion, and vision, we can make a difference and weave a future we understand. We are an inseparable part of life.
Este latido es nuestra
This
voz,
heartbeat is
nuestro
our
poder.
voice
El
and our
mundo
power.
late por
The
Latinoamérica.
world
Nuestro
beats for Latin
corazón
America.
es la
Our heart
respuesta.
is the answer.
Sí latimos. Une tu latido a la transformación
Sí,
global.
latimos.
Visita
Unite your
silatimos.transforma.global.
heartbeat to others. Visit silatimos.transforma.global.
Bueno, y gracias. Para compartirles el alcance de esta iniciativa, Si Latimos o Bacho
To share
Corazón,
the scope of this
portugués,
initiative,
sabemos que latimos significa
si
ladrar en
latimos.
español, pero también ladramos.
Latimos actually in Spanish means that the heart beats, but in Portuguese it means bark. So it may sound a little strange for Brazilians. Let's invite Danielle from the Talanoa Institute to answer a question for us, and then we're going to invite Mariana from Mexico to share a few reflections. Danielle, if you want, I can give you the microphone. The question is, in Latin America, the narrative of climate change is marked by outrage in face of climate injustice. How do you think we can go from this anger to a transforming action? What the Talanoa Institute or your personal experience in Latin America can contribute to this? How can we go from anger to concrete actions? Thank you.
Bom dia. A gente do Instituto Talanoa.
Good morning. We from the Talanoa Institute had a mission last year after a diagnosis that showed us that adaptation was under prioritized in the international negotiations. We thought we needed to do something, so we joined with our partner organizations, and we invited the most renowned experts of climate adaptation and loss and damages in the world. One of them is Pilar from Argentina and Dalid Thomas from Bahamas. And we decided to do an immersion program of 3 days in Rio de Janeiro so that we can speak the same language as they do in the organizations, so that we can understand this diplomatic language and have one more tool in this repertoire of going from anger to transforming action. We did that. It was very nice because we had this feedback of the non-Brazilian organizations, and that is why we dialogued a lot with the Si Latimos, because this is not a COP only of Brazil. Historically, Brazil forgets about their neighbors. We forget about the Spanish-speaking countries, and it cannot happen this year. We want to go on stage with you, and we don't want to be we don't want you to be overwhelmed by the size of Brazil, which happens a lot. So we trained our colleagues and we created a regional task force with over 40 organizations that are working nowadays very organically to actually work collectively in this prioritization of adaptation. So we followed the GGA, NAPS, and climate finance negotiations. We're very mobilized and we are proposing new tools now for advocacy, giving materials to the negotiators, letters, actions. The National Museum of the Republic, I'm not sure if you saw it yesterday, it was a very fruitful example of what we want to do to expand and grow, not only connecting with Latin America, but maybe with the peoples from the Pacific, Africa, Southeast Asia. That is a pathway that we found to transform anger into action. Thank you very much, Danielle.
Gracias, Dani.
Thank you, Dani.
Ahora vamos a pasar
Now we are
Mariana
going
Gutiérrez
to
de la
go to
Iniciativa
Mariana
Climática
Gutierrez
Global.
from the Climate
Mira,
Initiative of
Mari, a
Mexico.
nivel global,
Mari, at a
también
global
impulsan
level and also at a regional
las
level, many of the
iniciativas de
climate
climate,
initiatives
pero muchas
arise
por
from
fragmentación o
commitment,
división.
but
¿Cómo
they
podemos
die with
transformar estas
fragmentation or
iniciativas
divide. How can we
individuales
transform
en
these
largos
individual initiatives
proyectos
in
que
collective
solucionan
legacies
también los
from
diferentes desafíos?
everyone, also overcoming
Sí, muy
the
buen día a todas y
challenges?
todos. Soy
Thank
Mariana
you very
Gutiérrez de la Iniciativa
much.
Climática
I
de
am
México.
Mariana
Quiero
Gutierrez from the
puntualizar
Climate
junto con
Initiative of Mexico.
Juliana
I was
González
talking to Juliana and Pame about
pues me
this
gustaría darles un
conversation
poquito más
today,
de
and I
contexto
would like to
de
give
qué
you
hacemos
some
en
context of what
ICM,
we do
porque
at
estábamos
ICM
intercambiando ideas y bueno, y
because we
también
are
cuéntanos pues cuál es el
uh,
legado que ustedes
exchanging a
mantienen
lot of
con
information.
estas
And then you can
iniciativas
also
que
tell
son
us what
parte
is the
también
legacy
de
that
Latinos.
you are leaving with
Entonces,
your
comentarles
initiatives
que
as the
ICM
legacy
es
that
una
we are leaving with
organización no
Silatimos.
gubernamental mexicana, una especie de organización híbrida que está especializada en la implementación de proyectos que reducen emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero. Y nosotros usamos distintas herramientas para impulsar el que exista mayor ambición y acción climática en México. Entonces, no solamente somos un centro de investigación, sino que también facilitamos el diálogo y la colaboración entre distintos sectores y actores. Además, impulsamos procesos de incidencia y lo que hacemos también es recanalizar recursos internacionales para apoyar el ecosistema de sociedad civil y que también contribuyan a demandar más ambición y acción climática. Entonces, en ICM nos gusta mucho decir que trabajamos para facilitar las condiciones para que exista mayor implementación en México. Y un ejemplo muy claro de esto es cuando el gobierno federal presenta en 2020 una NDC que sí incluye más esfuerzos en cuanto a adaptación y también un proceso participativo, inclusivo y con una perspectiva de género, pero la realidad es que no presenta una NDC más ambiciosa, ¿no? Entonces no es una NDC que cumple con los principios de progresividad del Acuerdo de París, entonces no hay mayor ambición en la reducción de emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero. Entonces, lo que sucedió es que a través de distintas
So
alianzas
what happens
con
is
sociedad
through different
civil, sector
alliances with the
académico,
civil society, with the academic
organizaciones que están
sector,
encargadas o más enfocadas a la
organizations
movilización,
that are focused on
pues justo
mobilization,
coordinamos distintos esfuerzos para que de manera simultánea se llevaran a cabo campañas, movilizaciones en México. ICM al mismo tiempo elaboró una NDC desde sociedad civil, en coordinación con sociedad civil, demostrando que México sí podía incrementar más su ambición. Y además
we
hubo una
elaborated
organización
the
no
NDC
gubernamental
with
que
the civil
presenta
society showing that we
resultados
could have
similares a la
ambitions.
NDC que presenta México.
We
Entonces,
had a
justo todos estos elementos hicieron que
trial
hubiera suficiente
to deter
presión para que el
NDC that is
gobierno de
happening in
México
Mexico.
presentara una NDC más ambiciosa en 2022.
So all
Sabemos
of these
que esta
governments
NDC sigue siendo
pressured the government of
insuficiente,
Mexico to
pero sí fue
see
más ambiciosa que
to have them present a more
se están
ambitious
estableciendo
NDC.
otros esfuerzos para que
We are also having other efforts so that the future NDC 3.0, we are going to soon disclose the NDC 3.0, and we're ensuring these elements of
Gracias,
ambition and
Mari.
productivity.
Y pues acabamos de escuchar dos voces
Thank you
que
very much,
vienen de
Mari.
diferentes geografías y de
We
diferentes
just
zonas y
heard two
contextos.
voices.
Comparten algo en común, y es que son voces de
It's,
personas que
it
decidieron
comes from different
colocar su
territories and
energía
contexts,
en
but these are
diferentes
voices of
propuestas,
people who
eligiendo
decided
alianzas
to apply
y
their
haciendo
energy
diferentes
to
acciones desde lo
concrete
comunitario para un
solutions.
futuro mejor para todas y todos. Eso es el Muchirao latinoamericano.
We started
Eso es
from
Sí
grassroots
Latimos, la
projects to
plataforma que
guarantee a
cuenta
better
con
future for
320
everyone.
iniciativas
This is a
registradas
mutirão in
para
Latin America.
posicionarse
This is
como un
Silatimos, a
espacio
platform
idóneo
that has
para
over
novedades. Y voy
130
a pasar a la
registered
acción
initiatives
y
to
la
position
implementación.
itself as a key
También
space
vamos a mostrarles
to
3 casos de
move
estudio
to
de iniciativas
implementation.
y proyectos que se han registrado en Silatimos. Sabemos que América Latina
These are initiatives and
representa el triángulo
projects
de la
that
región
were
y que además más
that
del
apply to
60% de sus
Silatimos. We know
búsquedas
that the
provienen de
Latin
Honduras
America
y
has the
Nicaragua. La
lithium
región de acero es
triangle, and over
100% para
60% of the
2015.
electricity in the
Sin
region
embargo,
comes
lo
from
valioso
renewable
de esto no
sources. And
viene
the
del
projection is that
sino de su
100%
gente.
that we're
Por
going to get
eso,
to 100% by
desde Brasil, la
2050.
iniciativa Energia das Mulheres da Terra desde hace años trabaja realizando proyectos para
The
demostrar que la
initiative
transición
of
energética puede
the
integrar
Women of the
diversos
Earth in
elementos
Brazil
desde lo
has worked for
comunitario y
years to show
participativo
that
y
energy transition
además
can integrate different
integración.
elements,
En sí
community
latimos,
aspects,
30%
participatory
de las
aspects, and also
iniciativas
with
que
a
se han
gender
registrado
approach.
trabajan precisamente en
Silatimos, in
transición
Silatimos,
energética.
30% of the
Además,
registered initiatives
demostrando que
work
8 de
in
cada 10
energy
de estas
transition, showing
iniciativas
also that
lo hacen
8
con un
out of
enfoque
every
de
10
justicia,
initiatives
creando
do
enfoques de
that with a
igualdad, de
focus on
territorio, de
justice,
género, de dignidad. Y esto demuestra que América Latina está
focusing on
realizando
dignity,
acciones en
gender,
diferentes
territory, and
espacios y países
equality.
y que la transición
Latin
energética
America
sea
is
justa.
carrying out
Y
actions
mientras la
from
transición
different
energética
spaces and
justa
countries.
marca el pulso de la región,
And
hay un
energy
refuerzo
transition is
vital
going
en
to
la
be
región.
And the
just
energy
for us. This
transition
is
is
going
going to
to
be
be
just,
the
and this is
trademark
going
of
to
our
mark
region. And
the
there's
region.
another strong thing.
And
América
we
Latina
have
representa la
guardians
biodiversidad del
protecting
planeta
our
y sin
species
embargo
and
somos un informe
ecosystems.
planeta
We are the
vivo donde
most
el 90%
biodiverse region in the
de
planet,
las especies viven en
but the
pequeñas
last report by
poblaciones.
WWF
Afortunadamente, las iniciativas
says
en enfoques
that
silatimos
94% of the
hasta el
species
momento
are
una vez más
showing
están
this
trabajando en
population
enfoques de
decline.
conservación y de
So we have
restauración y de estas,
initiatives,
3 de cada 4
and one out
están
of five
directamente en los
are
territorios.
working
Y cuanto
with
que este dato
restoration
curioso
and
de la biodiversidad
conservation.
en la región
And we do
acerca quién
that
nuestra
directly in
vida
the
y el futuro
territories.
para el
So this
planeta.
is a curious piece of data,
América
and it's
Latina
only a piece
posee
of
la
data.
mayor parte de tierra
And
cultivable
so
del
in the
planeta.
future, we're
Sin
going to
embargo,
have
la
a
crisis
better
climática y
situation in the planet.
amenaza
We
con
have
el
the
40%
greatest
de los cultivos en la
amount
región. Por eso es
of
que no solamente
land that
estamos
is able
trabajando
to
desde
get
los bosques y la
uh,
biodiversidad, sino
plantations
que
in the
también
region.
hay quien
So
descuida
we
lo que
have
nace de la
people
tierra,
working from
desde nuestras semillas
biodiversity,
y
from the
nuestros alimentos.
wilderness, and
Es el
we
caso
have to
de
take care
Ecocería Cochabamba, que
of
desde
the
hace más de
food
20
and
años ha logrado una
different seeds.
conexión
We
entre
have this
quienes
eco
cultivan y
feta
con quienes
Cochabamba, and
consumen,
for over 20
demostrando
years,
que es
we are
posible
connecting those
transformar los
who are
sistemas
cultivating and
alimentarios
those who
con
are consuming,
enfoques
showing that it's
sostenibles.
possible to
En sí
transform
latimos
the
las
food
iniciativas
systems with
registradas,
sustainable
también
approaches.
hasta el
With
20% de
our
estas iniciativas pues trabaja
initiatives
precisamente en enfoques de agricultura.
recorded on
Y
our
además la
platforms,
mayoría, 2 de cada 3,
we
lo
see
hace
that
desde el
20%
territorio,
work
el
with
cuidar de la
agriculture,
recuperación
and
de las
two out
tierras,
of
creando
five initiatives,
capacidades con
out of three
enfoques de
initiatives do that
agroecología.
from the territory,
La región
with
también se juega su futuro en otro frente, que es
approaching
el
the
del cuidado
land,
del agua y
creating
el
training.
saneamiento en
But
ciudades. Se
we
estima que
also
América
have to
Latina duplicará el
consider
consumo promedio de
the
agua en
water
2030 grave con
scarcity
sed
in the
y que
cities.
incluso
Latin
ciudades como
America is
Ciudad de
going to
México
double its
podrían llegar
consumption
al
of
día
water,
cero mucho antes del
including in
2030.
cities such
De
as
nuevo, tenemos
Mexico
iniciativas en
City,
Cilatimos que están trabajando
and
en
we could
infraestructura, en
reach
agua y
this
en
moment before
saneamiento, y más
2030.
del
So
70%
we've
de
been
estas lo hacen
working
en
with
enfoques de
sanitation,
educación, creación de
infrastructure, and water
capacidades,
system, and more
organización,
than
movilización para
70%
la
of the
resiliencia y
initiatives are using
comunicación.
the mobilization for
América Latina es la
resilience,
segunda región
communication,
del mundo
and
más propensa a
capacity
desastres
building.
climáticos.
So
Cuando
Latin
estamos
America is the
inmersos en
second
diferentes
region,
desafíos.
and
pero también
the
América Latina
world
es un
more prone
laboratorio de
to climate
soluciones
disaster.
comunitarias que hacen
And we
diferentes
are also
acciones
a
para
lab of
abordar esto.
community
Es el caso
solutions
de
that
nosotros como
are
actividad resiliente, que desde
engaging
el
in
Chaco
different actions
mexicano
to
han
approach
realizado
this
diferentes
issue.
acciones de
So we
alfabetización
also have the
integral
case
para
of
sistemas de
Nanun.
alerta temprana,
At
creando
Chaco
capacidades
Americano,
para personas que se
they
ven
have
afectadas directamente
early
por los
alert
eventos climáticos
systems,
extremos.
building capacity for
Si
those
latimos,
who
el
are directly
75% de
affected
las
by the
iniciativas
climate events.
tiene estas acciones de
75% of our
educación, de
initiatives
creación de capacidades y
have
de generación de
educational
empleo. Además, 8
actions,
de cada 10
building
trabajan en
capacity, and
promover el
generating
desarrollo
jobs.
humano.
And 8 out of 10 work in the
Bueno,
promotion
estos
of
ejemplos
human
que nos
development
compartieron
and social
Mariana, Daniel y
development.
Pamela
So
en la región son tanto
these are
latinos que
the
los hacen
examples that you
130 que ya
shared from the
llevamos a la
region,
fecha
and they
y nos
are
demuestran
only
que la acción
some
ya está
of the
funcionando en los
130
territorios y ese
examples we have
multigrado
nowadays. So the
impacta.
action is
Uno
happening
de
in the
los
different
datos que
territories.
encontramos de todas las
And this
iniciativas registradas
Muchiron
que nos
is
pareció
going
pues
to
muy
be
importante para
unstoppable.
efectos del
And
Muchirán es que
another
el
piece of data that seems to
73%
be very
de las
important
iniciativas
for this
integran
Muchiron
redes
is
y
that
alianzas, no lo hacen
73%
solos.
of the
Sin
initiatives
embargo, también nos
are
llamó la atención que
performed
solamente el
in partnership
6% de todas las
or in
iniciativas
networks, and only
aparecen en los
6%
radares de
of
las
all the
grandes campañas de
initiatives
cambio climático
are
global.
showing in the
Por eso
radars
nuestra
of the
intención
great
acá
campaigns
es
concerning
visibilizar esos
climate
esfuerzos, grandes,
change
medianos,
in the world.
pequeños, en
So
el
we
territorio
want
y de
to
todo el
make
sector.
the efforts visible in the
Estas
territory and
iniciativas pueden
all over the world,
encontrarlas en la
including all of
plataforma
the
de
actors. So you're able to see the different
silatinos.transforma.global. Y
initiatives
además,
at this
ustedes pueden ser parte de estas iniciativas. Aquí a lo largo de
silatinos.transforma.global,
ayer
and you
y
may
seguramente de
be
hoy,
part of
muchos
the
de nosotros y
initiatives as well.
nosotras compartiremos diferentes iniciativas
Yesterday
que
and
están
also
haciendo
today, we are
diferentes
going to
acciones por
share
el cambio
different
climático. Y
initiatives,
seguramente todos y todas acá
and we
pensamos
have different
diferentes
climate
y desde
actions,
diferentes enfoques. Entonces les
and
invitamos a no quedarse fuera del mochilero
we have
latinoamericano, que
different
formen parte de esta
achievements from
plataforma,
different
que además
perspectives.
será la
So
plataforma
please be
digital
part of
de
this
la
platform.
COP30.
This is going to
Demostremos
be
que
the
desde
digital
Latinoamérica
platform
ya
for
realizamos acciones
COP30.
en lo
And from
comunitario
Latin
y
America,
territorial
we've
y
done
aspiramos a que Sí
different
Latimos pueda
actions
llevar
from
más
the
de 300
community base
iniciativas
and
hasta
from
la
the territory.
COP30,
Let's show that to
pudiendo
the
ser
world.
esa plataforma de
Silatimos
acción
wants to
comunitaria.
bring 300 initiatives to COP30.
Entonces, ¿están
And
dispuestos a asumir el reto y sumarse
so
al
this
Muchirao
is a new
latinoamericano?
question. Are
Y
we
solo hay una
willing
respuesta
to
correcta.
uh, take this responsibility?
Muy bien, sabemos que aquí hay personas latinoamericanas, pero también hay organizaciones de otros países.
There's only
Si
one
tienen
right
acciones
answer.
en Latinoamérica, todas sus iniciativas son bienvenidas. Pueden escanear el
If
código
you
QR.
perform
También los
actions in
dejamos
Latin
en las
America, you're
sillas
going
y
to be
atrás
welcome. You
encuentran
may scan the
libretas
QR
y
code.
stickers con el código QR de Silatimos
We
para que
are
también se
we're
sumen.
showing
Solamente
the
tarda
QR code
5
on the
minutos
tables, and
llenar
we
el
have different
formulario y ya hacen
stickers with the
parte
QR
de este
code.
movimiento que, como decía Pamela,
It
la
only
idea no
takes
es
5 minutes
solo visibilizar lo que ya estamos haciendo, sino
register
crear
and
una
leave
comunidad de
your
acción
form.
latinoamericana que trascienda la
The
conferencia.
idea is not only to raise
Y cerramos
awareness,
con
but
una
to
frase de
create
Angela
this Latin
que
American
dice que
community that
debemos
goes
actuar como
beyond
si fuera
COP30.
posible transformar radicalmente el mundo y debemos hacerlo todo
We
el tiempo. Únanse al
should
mochilero latinoamericano. Gracias.
transform the world radically, and we have to do that all the time. Let's make that happen with our Muchiron from Latin America. Thank you, girls.
Muito obrigada, muito
Thank you
inspirador.
so
E
much.
minha sensação foi que
Very
foi melhor ter
inspiring.
feito hoje. Que hoje
And
combinou mais
it
da
was better
energia.
to
Acho
have
que a gente
our
veio já com.
presentation of
E
Silatinos
agora a
today
gente vai ter
because we were
notícias
able to
diretamente do pessoal que
feel the
participou da
energy.
pré-COP,
And
para a
now
gente
we are
fazer com a
going
nossa
to
aliança, que
listen
eles conheçam
from
um
the people
pouco
participating
entre
at
a
the
pré-COP e o nosso
pre-COP.
evento
We
de
have this
mobilização da
bridge
sociedade
between
civil.
pre-COP and our
Então, para
event,
isso,
Mobilizing Civil
eu
Society.
convido a
And then I
Rafa,
would like
do Instituto
to
Talanoa, para
invite
mediar essa
Natalie
mesa.
from
Nathalie, bem-vinda,
Talanoa
desejada, muito obrigada.
Institute to be the mediator of this roundtable. Thank you, Natalie.
Ah, não precisa descer.
Oi, gente. Bom dia.
Hello,
Espero que vocês
everyone.
estejam
Good
bem.
morning. I hope
A
you're
gente não,
feeling
alguns
well.
de nós não estivemos com
Some
vocês
of us
ontem
couldn't be here
e
with
agora
you
chegou a hora da gente
yesterday,
contar um pouquinho o que a gente estava
and
fazendo,
now
tentando
it's time
fazer,
to tell
tentando
you
escutar, tentando
about what
entender
we
da
were
pré-COP
doing
ontem.
yesterday
Tinha
at the
alguns
pre-COP.
colegas aqui para a
So I'm
gente fazer
going
essa
to
sessão,
call
mas
up to the
antes de mais
stage
nada,
some of our colleagues.
pedir para quem
But
estava na
before we
pré-COP nesses
start,
dois
I
dias
would like
levantar
to
a mão para
ask
a gente
those
saber quem,
who
enfim,
were at the
estava
pre-COP
lá. Tem algumas.
to
Ó,
raise their
Karen, levanta essa
hands.
mão mais alta,
Karen,
viu?
could you raise your
Então,
hand?
temos algumas
So
pessoas
we
que
have
estão
some
aqui
people
e a
here,
ideia também é convidar
and the
quem
idea
estava
is
ao
to
final para
invite
trazer
them
perspectivas. Eu
to
acho que é super
bring
importante, claro,
perspectives
ouvir
at the end.
perguntas e tal.
This is
Mas
super
sem mais
important.
delongas, eu queria
And
convidar para a gente
without
fazer
further ado, I
essa
would like
troca aqui
to
o Cláudio
invite
Ângelo, do Observatório
you
Tolima.
to start with this
Bem-vindo.
exchange, having Claudio Angelo from
A
the
Tasnim, da Climate
Climate
Action Network.
Observatory, Hasnin Assaf
Bem-vinda.
from Climate Action Network, Can,
E a
welcome,
Michi, do
and
We Do.
Mishi Singano from We Do.
E depois a gente vai ter uma
And
cadeira que não
then we
vai
are
ser um
going to
aquário
have
exatamente, mas
another chair.
a
It's
gente
not
espera que seja
exactly
possível.
a fishbowl, but
Bom,
you may
gente,
see it
então
if
nos
you wish.
últimos dois
So,
dias,
in the last two
nós
days,
tivemos, estou esperando ainda a Michi chegar aqui,
I'm waiting for Mishi to come,
mas nós tivemos
but
esses 2 dias de pré-COP
we had
oficiais.
2 days of
Nos
official
próximos 2
pre-COP,
dias, hoje e
and in the
amanhã,
next two
a
days,
presidência da COP30
today and
continua em
tomorrow, the
consultas, né? As
presidency of
mobilizações
COP30
continuam aqui em
is
Brasília.
carrying on this
Então, é uma
consultation in
semana
Brasilia.
bastante
We
cheia.
have many delegations here in the
Welcome,
city.
Michi. Good to have
Welcome,
you.
Mishi.
E eu acho que a gente queria contar um pouco do que a
And
gente
we
viu.
wanted
Acho
to
que são
tell you
fragmentos,
about
cada
what
um viu
we saw.
fragmento. Então a gente
Each
vai
one of
juntar
us was able
as
to see a
peças agora
different
para o
fragment, and we're
formato
going to
e eu queria
bring
começar trazendo um pouco mais do
together the
contexto, depois
pieces
ouvir
to
cada
show
colega
you
por mais ou menos uns 5
a little
minutos,
bit of the
trazendo
context.
perspectivas. Mas a programação, ela tinha duas, digamos,
And
camadas, né, na
the
pré-COP. Tinha
program
uma
had
programação
two
oficial em
layers. This
que foram
official
feitas
layer
consultas,
where
especialmente
we
sobre
had
três
different
temas, né? O
consultations
tema
about three
da
topics: the
adaptação, o
topic
tema
of
da transição
adaptation, the
justa
topic of just
e
transition,
o Global Stocktake, o
and
balanço
the
global.
global
Aliás, mais do
stock
que
take.
tema, são itens de agenda
More
que o
than
Brasil, desde
topics, they
Bonn, né,
were
tem
agenda
priorizado e falado que são
items. And
agendas que a
since
gente precisa
Bonn,
avançar
Brazil
na
has
negociação. E nesse
prioritized these
programa oficial,
topics.
além
And
disso,
in
além
this
das
official
consultas em
program,
salas
we
separadas e
had
algumas
different
sessões mais abertas,
consultations in
o
different rooms and
Brasil
some open sessions. And
priorizou
Brazil
trazer
prioritized
cada
to
uma
bring
dessas
each one of
iniciativas ou
those initiatives
arranjos,
or
né, que
different
foram
arrangements
montados
that
esse
were
ano.
put
Então,
together
os
this year.
círculos
So we had
que
different
trouxeram
circles,
relatos. Então, o círculo de
and
presidentes,
they
o
brought
círculo de
reports,
ministros das
the
finanças,
circle
o
of
balanço
presidents, the
étnico-global, o
circle
círculo de
of
povos
finance
indígenas, né? E
ministers,
assim por diante.
the cycle
Foi a primeira
of
vez que a
the
gente
global
viu
ethical
essas
stock
coisas
take,
juntas. E
the
foi
circle of indigenous
interessante, mas
peoples. And
também
it
um
was
pouco,
the
eu diria
first
que
time for
frustrante,
us
porque os círculos
to
estão trabalhando,
see
digamos,
them
numa
working together.
altitude,
It was
e os
interesting, but
negociadores,
they
chefes de
are in this
delegação,
different
ministros que estavam presentes, não
uh,
necessariamente estavam
vibe.
na mesma
The
onda. Então,
ministers
uma
were
primeira
not at the
percepção que eu
same
queria
vibe
compartilhar com vocês
as
é que
the
para nós
circles.
que
So the
estávamos lá
first
como olhando,
perception is
às
that
vezes parecia um pouco
for
assustador. O que
us
está
who were
acontecendo
watching,
aqui, né? As
we
discussões
didn't quite
bastante até
understand what was
acadêmicas,
happening.
em certo
We saw
momento, né, sobre
some
Bakovec e roadmap, a gente falou, mas espera aí,
academic
a gente não estava aqui para
discussions
resolver a pré-COP.
at
Então
some
teve
points,
digamos,
but
essa construção que
we saw
foi
that
a opção que o
happening.
Brasil
It
fez.
was a
E por outro
construction.
lado,
Um,
enquanto
it was
acontecia
the
e
option made by
enrolava, né,
Brazil.
essa
And
programação oficial,
while we
a
saw
presidência
this
conduziu
official
consultas
program,
com
the
67
presidency
delegações
had
presentes
consultations with 67
sobre
different
os
delegations
120 itens de
about
agenda, né?
120
120 decisões possíveis, aliás, não itens de agenda
possible
que estavam colocados.
decisions
Então, eu acho que ao
in
final de ontem a
those
gente começou a ver essas
agenda
coisas, esses
items.
dois trilhos se
So we
encontrando
were
e
able to
foi
see
super
the two
interessante ouvir
tracks meeting,
da
and it was
presidência
super
que eles
interesting to listen
consideraram as
from the
consultas muito
presidency that
positivas,
they
principalmente
considered
porque eles
the
não só
consultations
mapearam
very positive, not
divergências
only
e
because they were
convergências,
able to
mas
map
começaram a
different
enxergar caminhos para
convergencies
poder
and uh,
dar respostas ali para
different
as questões mais difíceis. Eu vou
outlooks.
começar a
So they
convidar
are
o
able
Cláudio,
now
depois
to
Tasnim,
start
depois Mitch para
observing
comentarem.
and
Queria
creating
que vocês
solutions. So
trouxessem
I
pontos
wanted
do
to
que
give the
vocês
floor to
conseguiram
you
ver.
so
Ao
that you
final eu vou falar
can
um
bring
pouco sobre
different points
adaptação,
about what you were
mas
able to see.
acho que o
And at the
convite
end,
é
I'm
esse,
going
assim,
to
o
talk
que
about
chamou atenção
adaptation.
nessa
But that's
programação
the
é super
invitation.
complexa, na verdade, super
What
densa,
called
rolou
your
nesses
attention
últimos
in this
2 meses? E que
complex
caminhos fato a
program
gente
that
tomar para
happened in the
enxergar a
last
partir
two
de
days?
agora para
And
Belém?
what are the different
Cláudio.
pathways we see for Belém? Cláudio,
Você quer uma resposta honesta?
would you
Sempre,
like
é
to
a copa
have
da
an honest
verdade, não é?
response? Yes, this is the cup of truth.
Então, eu poderia
Well,
tentar
I could
construir uma
try
resposta
and
assim
build
racional com
a
começo, meio e fim, mas isso não
rational
refletiria o
response with
processo
a
da COP,
beginning, a
que
middle,
foi,
and an
como
end,
a nossa amiga
but
está
it
descrevendo, uma
wouldn't
coisa
reflect the
super
pre-COP process that
miscelânea.
was
Então,
a
eu vou fazer
great
umas observações em miscelânea
mix. So
também.
I'm going to have this
A
mixed
pré-COP, ela
observation as
tem
well.
um
So
elemento
pre-COP
aí,
has this
que é uma coisa que
element
não deveria estar em discussão,
that shouldn't
mas
be
que a gente
under
viu
discussion,
um
but
alinhamento, pelo menos
we
desses
saw this
78 países que
alignment
estiveram
of
aqui, é
72,
que todo mundo
72
estava ali muito
countries.
firme na defesa do
Everyone
multilateralismo,
was
nos
there
statements,
defending
nas declarações iniciais na
multilateralism in
plenária
their initial
de abertura,
remarks, in the
dos
opening
chefes de
table,
delegação e
with
ministros,
the
todos eles
chiefs of
reforçaram
delegations
muito
and
isso.
ministers. They all
Deveria ser
reinforced
óbvio,
that
porque nós
it should
estamos
be
num
obvious because we
processo
are in this
multilateral, mas no
multilateral
mundo que nós
process,
vivemos hoje,
but in the
nem sempre
world we
o
live
óbvio é tão óbvio
today,
assim. Então, acho que
not always is it
serviu
obvious, right?
para esse
So
alinhamento
it
básico em torno
was
de
good to
coisas
have
muito
this basic
essenciais, mas que não
alignment
podem
around
ser
essential
tomadas
things
dadas como certas
that couldn't be
hoje.
taken for granted today.
Muita gente repetindo as
And
prioridades da
many people
presidência,
were
reforçar o
repeating the
multilateralismo,
priorities of the presidency, reinforcing
traduzir a
multilateralism,
linguagem da COP
translating
para
the
e a
COP's
urgência
language
climática
and the
para
climate
as pessoas
urgency
comuns, e eu
to
acho que eles
common
falharam
people.
miseravelmente
And I
nisso.
think that
E o
they
outro objetivo
failed
que era,
miserably
não
at
lembro
this
agora
point,
qual era,
and this different objective that I can't remember right
mas
now.
eles estavam de acordo sobre
But
esse
they
terceiro
were in
objetivo.
agreement about the third objective as
E
well.
aí teve pouco de prestação de contas
And there was a
dos
little
processos que
bit
estão andando.
of
E a mais aguardada, que
of
apareceu em quase todos os
accountability on the
discursos
processes that were
dos chefes
ongoing.
de
And the
delegação, e que foi considerado por
item that
alguns países de
appeared in most
desenvolvimento, foi
of the
chamada
chiefs of
assim pelos países em
delegation
desenvolvimento de a
speeches
moeda da
and by
confiança
the
no
developing
COP30, que foi
country,
a
it was
apresentação do
called the
roteiro
currency
Baku
of
Belém
trust in
para
COP30. It was the presentation of the
1,3
Baku to
trilhão,
Belém roadmap for
recapitulando o
1.3
desastre que foi
trillion,
a conferência de Baku do
recapping
ano
the
passado. Todo mundo
disaster
estava
that
esperando
was the conference of
uma
Baku
meta de
last year.
financiamento
Everybody was expecting
muito maior do
a
que ela
finance
foi. As
goal
pessoas, os
that was a
países, pelo
lot
menos,
higher
esperavam
than it
financiamento
actually was. So the developing
público.
countries were
A Climate
expecting
Action Network,
public
que nós
finance,
todos
the
aqui
Climate Action
representamos,
Network that we all represent here,
propôs trilhão como
proposed a
quantum do NCQG
trillion
em financiamento público, que a gente
for the
obteve em
quantum
Baku
of
foram aquela
NCQG
coisa,
in
300
public
bilhões de várias
finance, and what
fontes
we
e responsabilidades
obtained
claras.
in Baku was
Teve uma
300
apresentação
billion
do
from several
grupo,
forces,
o Fernando
several
Haddad, que
sources.
lidera o Círculo de Finanças, falou
Fernando Haddad, that
sobre o que
leads
os
the
ministros estão
Circle of
fazendo, como ela fazia
Ministries
essa
of
própria,
Finance,
e
talked a little
seria
bit
hoje
about what they are
seu Círculo
doing.
de
The
Finanças.
report is ready.
E
It would
teve
be
uma
published today
apresentação do
from the
Azerbaijão da
Circle of the
estrutura do
Ministers of
documento que deve
Finance,
sair
and there
no
was a
dia
presentation by
27 ou 28,
Azerbaijan about the structure of the document that will be launched on the
roteiro de Baku
27th or
Belém, que é como é que
28th
o Brasil e o Azerbaijão
for
acham
the
que
Baku
vai
Belém
conseguir fechar,
roadmap,
fazer essa conta
which
fechar.
is about how
A gente
Brazil
acha
and
que a gente deixou essas
Azerbaijan
pessoas pouco
think
frustradas, que
that
pelo
we
processo que
can
está
make
rolando
the ends
há
meet in the
ano,
school.
o que eles apresentaram foi uma estrutura
What they
de documento.
presented was
Vão
the
ter 7
structure of a
slides
document. They
que
said
vão
that
etapar
there will
isso
be
aqui.
7
Os
pages
tópicos
on
são
that,
esses.
50 pages on this.
Obrigado,
These
boa
are the
noite.
topics.
Foi
Thank you very
engraçado que
much.
teve
Good evening.
inversão de agenda
And it was
nesse
funny
dia.
because there was an
A gente não
inversion
sabe
in the
se
agenda that
foi
day.
simplesmente
We don't
por
know
causa
if it was
da correria
simply
da pré-COP,
because
se
of
foi por causa
the
das
rush of the
consultas, ou se
pre-COP or
foi
because of the
para evitar
consultations or to
países ficar se
avoid
levantando plaquinhas para fazer
countries
perguntas
to
desconfortáveis. Mas o
raise
fato é
their
que
signs and
a
ask
apresentação do roadmap
uncomfortable
ficou para a
questions. But the fact
noite
is that the presentation
e
of the
foram ali
roadmap was
20
left to the
minutos de
evening,
apresentação do
and there
Azerbaijão
were
e
20
depois
minutes of
botaram o Zé
presentation
Schenkman,
by
que
Azerbaijan,
lidera
and
esse grupo
then
de
they put
economistas,
José Schenkman,
conselho de
who
economistas,
leads
3 prêmios
the
Nobel, etc., para
Council of
soluções
Economists. He
inovadoras
has
para
3
financiamento
Nobel
climático.
Prizes for
Ele
innovation
fez uma
solutions for
apresentação
climate finance. He
para mim e para outras
had a
pessoas absolutamente
presentation
incompreensível
that
em
was
polonês
absolutely
castiço
not
sobre as
understandable in
iniciativas
economies
de
about the
como
initiatives on how
de como
to
a gente resolve problemas de
solve
financiamento
problems
em
of finance
vários
in
lugares.
several
Então,
places.
transição energética para alguns
So,
países,
uh,
tentativa de
energy
aplicar carbono
transition for a
global.
few countries.
E foi isso, e acabou, e as pessoas saíram de lá um pouco
It
sem
was that.
entender
It was
direito,
over,
afinal
and
de contas,
people
o que queremos com esse roadmap.
did not
O que
understand
mais? Mais
quietly
fragmento de
what
coisa. Acho que
we
teve uma
needed and
sessão
what
de
we
discussão
wanted with that
sobre...
roadmap. There was
Teve
a discussion
pedaço
session.
de painel que eu
It
perdi
was a
ontem
panel
de
actually that I
manhã
missed
sobre energia.
yesterday
E a ministra
on
Marina fez uma
energy.
fala bastante forte sobre a necessidade
Minister
da
Marina
gente
had a
ter
very strong
algum
speech on the
tipo
need
de resultado
to have
em
some kind of
Belém
result in
sobre transição
Belém
energética. Ela falou de
on
parágrafo
energy
28, implementação,
transition.
aceleração da implementação
She
do
talked
parágrafo
about the
28
acceleration
e
of the
aparentemente
implementation of
alguns
paragraph
países, tipo a Arábia
28,
Saudita,
and a few countries like
reagiram
Saudi
com as
Arabia,
linhas de sempre
they
deles, dizendo que o
reacted
parágrafo
with
28
their lines, their usual
só
lines,
para
saying that the
traduzir
paragraph 28, just to translate
a linguagem
paragraph
dos pervertidos,
28,
segundo a
just to
orientações da
translate the
Maria,
language
é
of
o
the
que fala
wicked,
sobre
as Maria
transição
mentioned,
energética
paragraph
e
28 talks
então
about
um
energy
monte
transition,
de itens, então ensaios de
and it
combustíveis
has a
fósseis,
bunch of
triplicar
items.
renováveis, triplicar eficiência energética.
It's
E a Arábia
doubling
Saudita
renewables,
reagiu
doubling
dizendo que,
energy,
olha, a gente
tripling
já
energy
sabe, a gente
efficiency.
já
And so
explicou
Saudi
aqui
Arabia
quantas vezes a gente vai
reacted by saying,
explicar para
we
vocês de novo
explained
que o
here
parágrafo
and we'll
28 é um
try to
menu,
explain
não
again
é um
that
bloco
paragraph
de
28
coisas
is not a
para a gente
menu, it's
fazer.
not a block of
Então,
things for us
essa
to
é a
do.
abordagem, acho que isso ficou claro também
This is the
nas
approach. It
discussões
was very clear
do diálogo
also
dos Emirados Árabes sobre a implementação do balanço
on
global.
the United
Esse
Arab
diálogo vai
Emirates
ser uma
dialogue
coisa
on the
assim
global
muito
stock take.
leve,
This
sem
dialogue
ter
is going to be something very light without imposing
facilitativo
obligations on
e
anyone,
colaborativo.
facilitative and collaborative.
Então é meio que vem quem quer. Então acho que quem estava esperando uma coisa mais robusta de implementação
So if
do balanço
you
global a partir
are
do diálogo dos Emirados
expecting
Árabes,
something more
tende a se
robust on
frustrar. A boa
implementation
notícia é
from the
aparentemente
United Arab
o desastre foi
Emirates,
o que saiu de Belém
dialogue is going to
para
be
Belém
frustrated.
sobre esse item de negociação. Acho que teve algumas
There
convergências,
was a
mas é uma
text
convergência
that
no
showed
sentido de
some
deixar o texto
convergence
mais diluído e
to,
não
but it was
mais radical.
convergence in terms of leaving the text a little bit more diluted. Tasneem, is going to be an honor to listen to your perceptions now on what you thought about the pre-COP.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everybody. All right, let me take this off. Yeah, so understanding that that your reflections already, I think that the design of the pre-COP itself, with all its new innovations and different tracks and unexpected elements like an economist that confused us. So in addition to all of that, I do think coming out of the pre-COP, but maybe I should just take one step back. If there were any expectations that the pre-COP was going to be the place where we get absolute certainty, where we might be landing at the COP, that we're starting to, get clearer and clearer, that might have been a wrong expectation. And it might seem like, okay, I believe we've got 23 days to go to the COP, and that might seem short, but 23 days is a long time. So I just want to put that into perspective. The pre-COP as a key moment ahead of a COP, but also that not all is lost if everything did not become clearer and clearer at the COP. For people who have been to many, many, many COPs, and I'm sure there's many of you here, you would recognize this rhythm. So based on that, I think that the Brazilian pre-COP actually helped with a number of things through its approach and design. The one, that it did allow for that open, more creative space of sharing ideas through the ministerial roundtables, getting the circle of ministers, what are they? Circle of ministers, to present what their work was, etc. Now the design was okay, but when you consistently get ministers who come with set speeches, then it's a problem. So the design is great, but the content wasn't so awesome because our ministers tend to do the same thing year in and year out, and they come and do their set speeches, and they have long shopping list of issues, and you really don't know what to take out of it. But okay, they engaged. So you had a high level sense of what they are seeing as important priorities. But the most important, I would suggest, part of the pre-COP design was those breakout groups. And the fact that they narrowed down the issues to 3: just transition, adaptation, and GST, already starts signaling, I think, for us, that that's the contours of the kind of package that we would look at the COP itself. The work to get that kind of package. And of course, I wasn't in all the breakout groups. I just concentrated on just transition, followed it right through. That is our priority as a network. Also, of course, Mishi will talk about it, the rights-based organizations. So just reflecting on the just transition. We do want a really strong outcome in Belém on this area. We've been working very hard, particularly to get the idea of setting up a mechanism, a global mechanism under the program of just transition, which we've been calling the Belém Action Mechanism. I'm sure Anna must have spoken about it on the first day. We want that agreed to. So I'm just going to sum up where pretty much that just transition conversation landed. There's a growing convergence amongst all parties about the general things. You know, just transitions are country-driven, bottom-up, national, etc., some of the key principles. But the biggest divergence is on the issue of institutional arrangements. Developed countries do not want to set up new institutional arrangements or any additional institutional arrangements. Developing countries want an institutional arrangement because the developed countries, of course, believe that it's really great to just keep on sharing best practice. We'll share knowledge, we'll share best practice, whereas developing countries have a real urgent need to get the kind of international support and cooperation to make just transitions at national level real and implementable. And so there's a bit of a mismatch in the kind of conversation on the just transition. That then signals an important area for us to work on as civil society, that we need to build as much consensus on the issue of, firstly, just transition as a big outcome, secondly, about the institutional mechanism. Some other general reflections. I'm not going to get into GST. Well, you got into GST. It sounded like everything was going well in GST when they gave the summary, which was pretty surprising. But one of the things that we need to really look at is the accountability piece of the GST. I know we are focused on Article 28, and we need to look at how we get to deal with that issue, but the accountability piece in the GST must be strengthened. And I'm sure Mishi will talk, you are going to talk about adaptation thing. So another general observation, of course, that we will have to consistently be clear about is the role of observers and how we are treated in these kinds of processes. It's not just this process, it's generally other processes as well. It was great, we were invited, so that's already a step. And then we could sit and listen in the plenaries, and we were told that we can't speak in the breakout groups. But some of us actually managed to speak in the breakout group. Well, at least in Just Transition, you know, we took a gap and they let us speak. And then we had our own little session in the plenary for the constituencies to deliver 3-minute interventions. 2, but we made 3. In any case, you know, that kind of craziness of, short interventions, speaking to a room full of parties who might not be listening to you, and no engagement. No engagement. So we were done, we were thanked in very nice ways. Minister De Silva thanked us amazingly, and we were done. But of course, we also had a separate engagement with the presidency. He had a meeting with the constituencies where we could raise directly with them all our issues, ranging from content to floor space. In any case. So honestly, the quality and effectiveness of observer participation in a pre-COP like this, but as I said, even at the COP, is highly problematic. Because if you hear every single minister, including the presidency, they will be saying, we need you, we need your voice. And in fact, we were told, we need you to protest. Yeah, it seems like they think that's all we do. That is deeply worrying, that you say this, you tell us this, and you consistently not create the space for us to raise voice, for us to raise our ideas, etc. So that would be the one, not negative, but concerning reflection I would have about the pre-COP. It is unfortunate that we didn't have opportunities, especially in those small breakout groups, to engage with parties, because many of them actually don't understand some of these issues. I was shocked to hear parties not even understanding what just transition is, what it means, what it involves. They all have very diverse understandings of this. Some of them think, it's just workers, so in any case. That's my reflection. I am not unhappy with this pre-COP at all. I think it was super useful to test the temperature. So I'm not worried about the Brazilian presidency and whatever. That space was for us to hear what the parties were saying, where they standing on each of these issues, where the problems are going to emerge, and what we need to prepare for in this lead up to that COP. Last point. The most important meetings, I suppose, is happening now, today and tomorrow. That's where they're having, we're not there, of course, the problem children, but they'll be having very serious closed discussions about the more difficult issues. 9.1, the finance provision that the developing countries want as an agenda item, as you know. If that doesn't get resolved, hopefully there'll be consensus, we could potentially have an agenda fight. And the other issue, of course, is the trade issue. How that will be dealt with, where it will be dealt with, etc. So no, I think it was good, the pre-COP. And I do think it does give us a little bit more sense of the contours and the landing zone. And for us as CAN, we really think a justice package would include these items: just transition, adaptation, and GST with the accountability strengthening, and of course, the gender action plan. But you will talk about that. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Tazinho. Muito bom. Acho que antes de passar para a Misha, enquanto ela se prepara, é muito importante esse comentário que você fez. A gente teve realmente que cavar espaço para a sociedade civil, né? Nos breakouts, na plenária, quer dizer, a gente ficava ali tentando, né, dar aquela, aquela cotovelada, porque a participação para nós, sociedade civil, não era natural, não tinha um lugar designado, né? Quer dizer, teve essa sessão com as constituencies, mas como você falou, bastante limitada, bastante também protocolar, né? Então, acho que é um sinal importante para a COP, como pode ser um desenho diferente e a ser negociado. Michi, eu soube que gênero foi quente, que teve, enfim, discussões bastante acaloradas, então vai ser ótimo ouvi-la sobre o que aconteceu, não só sobre gênero, mas em geral, sobre justiça nesses últimos 2 dias na pré-COP.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the invitation as well. Good morning, everyone. So we'll talk a little bit about gender a little bit later. So just to echo what my colleagues says in terms of the sentiments on the civil society participation in the overall feeling, I as well feeling that this pre-COP in particular was not terrible, right? In a sense that it gives us the space to hear the party, their thoughts, where the conversation is, but also as advocates, it allows us now to go back and sort of like refine our strategy and know who to target and things like that. And traditionally, if you have engaged in that space, in the pre-COP space, because pre-COP is in the discretion of the presidency, and it's a very constrained, just to help the presidents getting indication from parties on where they should sort of like take their leadership on. And in the previous, for example, pre-COPs, we only have 2 slots for constituency. And for this COP, the presidents added another slot, so all of us received 3 slots, and they made a condition that the 3rd slot goes directly to civil society representative from the region, which it has never happened before. So for example, the WGC, we already had, out of the 2 slots, we already have 1 already been given to the feminist from the region, from Brazil. So when you get the additional 1, we also gave it to the colleagues from the region. So we ended up having 2 colleagues from the region out of the 3 slots that we have. So I think that sort of like they indicate as well the approach of the presidency to really making sure that the COP being hosted in the region is also open space for the civil society in the region, of course, with all the constraints that comes with it. And in terms of like the other positive, yeah, and I'm putting positive with the caveats because the positive are not always the positive in totality. But to echo the sentiment that Tas has raised in terms of how important the working group was, and I think for me, the critical importance is how the presidency was bold enough to ask the kind of question they ask. So they force parties to have conversation on issue that they know they're contentious. So for example, in the just transition, to have 1 out of the 2 questions on institutional arrangement, it was a really bold decision because if that question was not asked, chances are parties will just talk about everything else except that. So being very tactical on this is the kind of feedback we want from it allowed the conversation to happen. And because that conversation happened, then we know, the presidency know, and we know who to engage and who is the villain in the room, where the divides are, where the conversation, because everyone was forced to put their cards on the table. And I think that is a critically important. In terms of the other thing, I think overall in this space, we know the villain, and it's a little bit exhausting because every day you wish that colleagues come to this space to advance their agenda, but increasingly we know like there are colleagues who come to the space just to block and not to engage and stand in their party position. And we, in several groups, even though the facilitator will engage them and ask, parties will just read script. And that was not in the spirit of having a discussion. And they really want to unapologetically call in the governments from the EU, like the way they showed up in the conversation across the board. They have been really enemy of the progress. And I think coming back, it's task on us and task on you to really engage them and potentially call them out, because they, in GST, for example, they got to the extent that they are not just the villain, but they put the blame on others. They're asking or they're blaming the Global South, like why you are not agreeing to have a decision. What's your fears? While they very well know that Global South is not agreeing because they are not doing their part. And they cannot, they're blocking what the Global South want, but they're blaming them that we want a decision except that. And because you don't want to agree to what we agreed, then you are the problem. And they have been playing this narrative for the longest time everywhere. And in Just Transition, they keep on saying, we have enough institutional mechanism. They gave us number on the budget and etc. Like they make us seem that we are the problem and not them. And I think we really need to aggressively counter them on that narrative. And again, using all the technicalities, the language, the provisions, and quoting everything else except their lack of accountability from their part and the failure for them to deliver their commitments. So that was one big reflection, I think, from my end. And last, in terms of gender, so gender specifically was not on the agenda because, unsurprisingly, she was not on the agenda. But apparently, finally, the presidency has decided to make gender an agenda. So they will have a discussion, the head of delegation discussion on gender tomorrow. Which is a progress because that never happened most of the time that gender is being discussed at the head of delegation level, so that will happen. But we just noted, and I think this is happening in the just transition, the contradiction that Argentina, and I think colleagues need to be aware, Argentina has launched a war against gender in the space. They have been actively engaging in the gender to really question even the use of the word gender, and they taking that in every room possible, and that's something that we need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ai, desculpa. Estava super feliz, tinham 19 minutos, cortaram 10.
I was super happy because we still had 19 minutes, but it's only 10 in reality. I'm going to be brief on the topic of adaptation, and let's open for new considerations. A remarkable thing was that adaptation was present in the discourses of almost all of the ministers from all the delegations. It was quite impressive on the first day, and this is a good sign, of course. And the second good sign is that many people are talking about adaptation results at the first week that was coming from different delegations, developing countries, developed countries. So there's this appetite to find this landing ground for decisions. But at the breakout rooms on adaptation, we saw that for the different indicators of the DGA, we have a long journey ahead. We have divergences on the nature of indicators, number of indicators, architecture of implementation for the indicators and implementation means, and a highlight to finance. But during the consultation, I had the impression that the problem was within G77, that the developed countries are agreeing with what came from Bonn and the workshops because they see the indicators as voluntary, they choose what they are going to report on, so they don't have to discuss if the set is big or small. Each country is going to use whatever they feel that makes sense. But at G77, in the groups of G77, they have different views. I won't name different delegations, but we see this great gap. So the work of indicators must happen within G77 in the next day. And the other point is finance. I don't know if you're aware, but in Glasgow, we adopted this target of doubling adaptation until 2025. We will only see if it was achieved within 2 years because the data are going to come. And now that the Americans left the Paris Agreement, we will see a drop. So the scenario for adaptation finance is a great, has a great expectation of falling, and several commitments of individual countries, those who have the obligation to finance, they are going to end now or next year. So the situation is dire. So the intention is that we could build a bridge until MCQ QD in within 2 years. So
eu queria
developed
saber essa
countries
disposição dos 22
have
até os
put on the
30.
table
E essa
this
proposta eu acho
idea
que
of
ela ganhou força.
tripling
Isso foi um fato
until
positivo também agora nos
2030.
breakouts e
And
nos
it was
principais,
a
porque
positive
vários
fact
países que não
because
são
in the
países desenvolvidos
breakouts,
começaram a
because
falar disso.
the
O
least
México,
developed
Chile,
countries are
outros
talking about
começaram a
that, in
falar disso.
Indonesia,
Então, eu acho
Chile,
que
and
essa
so on.
proposta ela está
So I
caminhando,
believe that
mas
this
também, por outro
proposal
lado, os
is
países
advancing,
desenvolvidos estão
but on the other
totalmente
hand,
contrários. Eles não querem de
developed
jeito
countries,
nenhum
they are
uma nova
opposing.
meta. Então, acho
They
que a gente
don't
tem
want
aqui
this new
travado uma
target. So
batalha.
I
E
think
aí, do
this is a
ponto de
new
vista da
battle.
sociedade
And
civil,
from
né,
the
e vários
standpoint
aqui
of civil
assinaram uma
society,
ata, a gente
and
está
several
discutindo
of
essa
us
posição
signed a letter,
forte.
and we are
É muito
putting
importante
pressure. And
empurrar
it's
essa
very
discussão
important to
mesmo a
advance
partir da
this
proposta do
discussion
LDCs, mas claro, com
from the
abertura para
LDC
alguma outra coisa,
proposal, but
porque
from
realmente eu acho que se não tiver
the
uma meta em
opening
Belém,
for
eu acho que
other
não vem
things.
depois.
Because
Eu
if
acho que
we
isso
don't
vai,
have a
a gente
target
vai
in Belém, we won't get it
eventualmente
later.
se nesse
So we are going
eu acho que adaptação é
to
isso mesmo
leave
que eu
with
queria
the
trazer. Eu
abyss.
acho que
So
tem,
concerning
digamos que,
adaptation,
bom
this is the
humor,
summary. I think
mas
there's this
o
good
diabo mora
mood,
nos detalhes,
but
né?
the devil
Cláudio, você falou muito
is
sobre
in
isso.
the
Você quer complementar
details.
alguma coisa? Eu acho
Claudio, would
que
you like to add something
eu
to the
queria abrir.
conversation?
A gente tem
But you
4
didn't
minutos e
talk
meio.
much.
Queria
So,
trazer, de
no?
repente, alguém que
Okay,
estava
I want
na
to
pre-COP
open
queira
up
trazer
for
outros pontos
comments
ou então
or
perguntas.
questions if you would like to ask something. Camila?
Como dar o microfone ali? Obrigada.
Minha pergunta é sobre o tema de
My
natureza,
question
florestas, né?
is about nature, forests.
Queria saber se
I
apareceu,
wanted
se
to
existiu um
know if
evento, e me
this
parece que o
topic
foco do
emerged.
evento de
I
natureza
know
era
there
falar do
was an
GST.
event, but the focus was
E,
T
assim,
triple
quando o
F,
tema do GST e da
the
implementação do GST
tropical
estava sendo
forest
tratada, houve um
facility.
foco ou uma tratativa específica,
So did
já
you
que os
have
33 e 34 do
a
GST já
specific
trabalham com desmatamento e
work
degradação
about
florestal e com prover o financiamento
34,
adequado
Article
para
34,
esse tópico?
about the proper
Especialmente
finance for this
se
topic?
países
And if
trouxeram
countries brought that
isso como algo de
in their
prioritário ou não.
discourses as something that was a priority or not.
Não me lembro se trouxeram,
I can't
mas não
remember
acho
if
que
they
isso
brought
não
it,
apareceu
but this
de
is a
maneira
sign
forte.
that it
Todo
didn't
mundo falou muito de
emerge in a
adaptação,
strong
todo mundo
way.
falou muito de dinheiro,
Everyone talked about adaptation, about
mas a
money,
natureza,
but
um ou
nature,
outro
just a
país.
few mentioned that.
Acho que República Democrática do Congo.
I believe that the Democratic
Eu não
Republic of
estive
Congo.
nos breakouts porque
I
eu também
wasn't in
não
the
tinha badge
breakouts
constituency. O
because
que a
I
gente
didn't
sabe
have a
pelo
badge of
relato
constituency.
feito
What
pelo
we
Túlio no
know
final
from the
da discussão
report
do
by
GST
Tulio at
foi
the end
que
concerning the
eles estão tratando tudo
GST
como
discussion
pacote.
is that
Então
they
não
are treating everything
houve,
as a package.
não quero usar essa palavra,
I
mas não
don't want
houve
to
cherry
use
picking
this
de
word, but
artigos.
we couldn't see a
Foi
cherry
só
picking
dentro
of
daquele
articles.
espírito
It
que a
was
gente
a
viu em
single
Bonn,
thing with the same spirit
de
we
não
saw
vamos apontar
in
dedo, não
Bonn.
vamos dar tarefa para
Let's not
ninguém.
point fingers. Let's not
As palavras-chave aí são
give tasks
facilitativo
to
e
anyone.
cooperativo.
The keywords were facilitative and cooperative.
So specifically on the TFF, there was a discussion, a very detailed presentation that was shared with like the model, the projections, and how that was different. I think they got feedback. We understand Brazil did try to socialize the proposal in several spaces. They had an event in the Africa Climate Week. They also had the same event in New York. There was overall feeling that the parties are not understanding the differences of the proposal that has been put on the table. So the event that was happened here went to the details of the proposal itself. Unfortunately, and of course, they had Congo as a co-sponsor who already is on board, and they did make a reference to the GST decision that really brought that to life, so connected that in the event. However, they have not, because there was too much information that was given, and again, the audience for the pre-COP was the ministerial level folks who not necessarily like engaging in that space. So there was not a lot of feedback that was given. From the civil society, we did have a conversation among ourselves. I don't know if Tasnim knows, but with the Tasnim team, finance team, looking at the merits of this proposal, because most of us don't, because there was not a lot of information that was coming forth in terms of the modality. The president did communicate the intention and the value, but the modality and the engine where the money will be sourced, how will it work, and its implication, that information was not made available until a few days, until during the pre-COP. And we do hope that now with this information, the civil society team will continue to interrogate the proposal and potentially have a concrete recommendation moving forward.
Obrigada. Só um adendo, teve também oceano, quando teve as sessões de
we also
natureza,
had
teve floresta,
ocean.
TFF,
We had
Belém,
forest,
e eu lembrei de uma coisa que
T-F-F, and
durante as
oceans.
discussões
So
da
during the
FFF,
discussions of
teve reações de
T-F-F,
delegações,
we
por
had
exemplo, Papua Nova
reactions from
Guiné, no âmbito
different
da Coalition for
the
Inclusive Nations,
delegations. For instance,
teve uma fala
Papua New
bastante
Guinea,
forte,
on
falaram,
behalf of
a
the
gente acha que vocês
coalition,
estão reinventando
they
a
had
roda,
this strong
e essa roda
speech
pode
saying that
atrapalhar outras rodas
you're
também.
reinventing the
Então tem
wheel that could
atenção. O
disturb
nosso
other
tempo acabou, mas
wheels
eu vou aproveitar
existing.
e vou deixar
Our
um
time
restinho
is
de
up, but
pergunta
I'm
para
going
as
to ask Henrique to ask a question to
Thank you very much.
Silatinos.
Just a quick question about the sustainable fuels conversation. I hear different things about it. What was your perception about that conversation? Thank you.
Sim, isso é uma coisa que apareceu muito
Yes,
forte. Eu acho que é uma coisa que a gente
and
pode
that was
esperar ver
something
muito
that
forte
emerged strongly,
na cúpula de
and we
líderes,
could
porque
expect that in the
saiu um
Leaders
documento, é
Summit
uma
because
proposta
the
do Brasil
document
apoiada por
was
Japão,
launched
Itália e
is a
Índia,
proposal by
de
Brazil, supported
quadruplicar
by Japan, Italy, and India to
combustíveis sustentáveis
quadruple sustainable
até
fuels
2035 em
until
relação aos níveis de
2035
2024.
compared to the levels of
Tem
2024.
risco
So
que
there's
a
a
gente
risk,
enxerga
we see
de
that
que o
risk,
Brasil esteja
that
querendo, por
Brazil
partes, porque a gente não tem certeza do quão consensual
or
isso é
part of
dentro do
Brazil
próprio governo
is willing
do Brasil, mas
something, and
existe
we don't know how
de
much is coming
que
from the government, but there's
toda
this
essa
risk
conversa sobre
that all this
biocombustíveis
conversation about
possa acontecer em
biofuels could
substituição
happen to
a uma conversa mais
replace
séria na cúpula
this
de líderes a
most
respeito de
serious
combustíveis fósseis.
conversation
A gente não pode
concerning
deixar que isso
fossil
aconteça.
fuels at the Leaders
Com
Summit.
isso, muitíssimo obrigada. A gente
Well
segue
said.
conversando sobre
So
pré-COP
let's
depois,
move
aí
on talking
fora.
about pre-COP
Obrigada a todos vocês.
outside, and thank you so much.
Muitíssimo obrigada, Nathalie.
Thank you so much,
Panelistas.
Natalie, Amperstel, and the panel members.
Pode. Muitíssimo obrigada, Nathalie, os
Thank you so
panelistas.
much
Pode deixar. You can leave it there.
to Natalie and the panel members.
We will take care of it. Pessoal, o pessoal do Silatimos tinha feito uma
The
proposta,
Silatimos team had this proposal for activities that they couldn't put together yesterday, but they were able to bring it today. They had this
vocês fazerem desenhos que vocês querem que
fabric
sejam
with
levados para a COP. Eles estão
paints,
fazendo essa
and
montagem em várias
you
cidades,
could
de vários
paint
países. E
the
esses
fabric.
panos depois serão
They are
levados à
doing
COP.
that in several
Agora a
countries
gente
with
então
several
aproveita
activities
para
you may paint,
colocar
and they are going
energias
to
também
bring
em uma
that
outra
fabric
mídia,
to
de uma outra
COP.
forma, para saber se
So
consegue
let's
chegar
put
lá.
our energy in a
E
different
nós
media,
teremos,
in a
após o
different way, so
intervalo,
that we can reach
os
that
dois aquários
conversation.
temáticos
And
que
we are
estão
going to
faltando.
have the
Nessa
two
sala vai
final
ter
fish bowls
adaptação
on this
e na
room.
sala
In this room, we
Alvorada
have
vai ser
adaptation,
transição
and
justa.
at
Caso
Alvorada, we
você
are
não
going to
saiba
have
onde é
just
a sala
transition. If
Alvorada,
you don't
a
know
hora que
where
der o tempo do
Alvorada room
intervalo, vai ser um
is,
intervalo de 15
we are going to
minutos,
have a
você
15-minute
segue
break, and then
a Marina.
you should follow Marina.
Tá? Ela
Okay?
vai levantar a mão na hora que a gente der
Marina is
pausa.
going
Paulo,
to
hoje vai ser
raise her
mais curto,
hand
que a gente
when
está nesse
we
foco de
stop. Our
acabar
break
até
is shorter
1h30.
today because we
E um
have to
outro aviso
end until
importante,
1:30. And another
um aviso,
important
deixa eu ver. Devolvam
message is
os
that we
fones
should give
se
back
você for
our
para outra
phones
sala, porque
if we
lá
go
é
to the
outro
other
fone,
room
é outro
because you
sistema.
have to get
E
a
a gente
different
vai mexer o layout da
device with a
sala.
different
Então, se você
system there. And
deixar
we're
a
going
sua
to
bolsa
move
aqui,
the
tudo bem,
furniture
só saiba
here.
que quando você
So if
voltar, a
you
sua
leave
cadeira pode estar em outro
your
lugar,
purse
tá
here,
bom?
that's
15
okay,
minutos
but
de café é bom
remember
e
that it
voltava
could be a
todos e a
different
gente já
in a
se vê.
different place when
Obrigada.
you come